Hi, my name is Hunter Roark, and I am doing a presentation over dumping. Now, before I did any research over this, I did not really know much about trade dumping or dumping in general. And the dumping is defined as a business selling their product in another country lower than the cost of making the product or lower than the cost of the product made in that country. And many businesses do this across the globe, especially foreign countries here in America, like China or India or even Mexico and countries in South America. Now, businesses have many reasons for dumping, including they have a strong foreign competition, like products here in America. Other countries want to compete with American-made products, so they just use really cheap labor and sell their products at a much lower price than the same products here. And a business may want to completely remove a competitor, and so the best way to do that is just to get the consumers to purchase their product over the competitor's product. And another reason could just be because a business has way too much in stock, so they just have to get rid of what they have. And also, businesses that usually dump in another country, they tend to have a very low price in the foreign markets, but at home they may have a high price. Now, there are several advantages and disadvantages with dumping. An advantage could be consumers. Consumers could pay a lot less for a product, and another advantage could be businesses who dump, they increase their market share even if they take a loss in profits. They, expand to another market. They expand and eventually can actually gain a profit since they actually have a foothold in that country's economy. Now, I believe there are a lot more disadvantages to dumping than advantages, especially with local businesses or businesses in the countries that they dump in. The economy, the businesses, local businesses, they can all be badly damaged. There's also another disadvantage is the retaliation made by that country, the World Trade Organization, and even the European Union through the, I believe the European Commerce. And what they could do is the countries can place a tariff onto the exporting country's goods, so they really wouldn't be making much money off of their products because of the tariffs. And the World Trade Organization can actually it's really not illegal to dump in a country, but it is very looked down upon by the World Trade Organization, the European Union, and pretty much everybody. It's just bad business. And also, dumping is a very expensive practice because they're pretty much not really making a profit, because usually it's products that are produced and they are sold at a lower cost than what they were made to produce, and so it's just not a good business practice, except for countries who are able to produce something at such a very low cost, but it is still bad for business in other places. Some examples of dumping that I have researched and read about, where in the mid-2000s, both India and China, still today, they're major producers of silk. In India, has one of the largest markets for silk, and in the mid-2000s, India claimed that China was pricing their silk so low that Indian competitors who were also producing silk could not compete. And India responded at the time by putting a 57 to a 116% tariff on all silk imports from China. And this really would have helped Indian competitors, because then the price for Chinese silk would probably be around the same price as Indian silk because of those tariffs. Another big example would be the myriad of products and just parts that are produced in China, Taiwan, Japan, Mexico, numerous countries that are sold here in America. The labor is so cheap in all these other countries that these companies decide to build these products in other countries so that the cost to produce won't be extremely high, and companies will be able to price their products cheap here in America by producing their products overseas, so that they can pretty much just have a competitive advantage over other companies producing the same thing here in America. Now, the two biggest organizations that combats dumping and trade dumping is the World Trade Organization and the European Union. Now, the World Trade Organization is against dumping, however, they do not prohibit it, and it is technically not illegal. But with the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, they do allow countries to defend themselves against other countries who try to dump their products in their market. The World Trade Organization may conduct an investigation if a country can prove to another country, or can prove that another country is dumping. Now, there are several things that the World Trade Organization looks for, and there are several things that the EU also looks for. And the EU may also conduct an investigation as well. Pretty much they have to show that that product and that company and that country are damaging the economy of the country that's being dumped into. Let's see. Now, my thoughts on dumping, I will be answering questions 619 and 620. Now, question 619, I agree that most people do not care where a product is produced, here in the United States at least, as long as they are paying the lowest price for the product. However, I do believe that there are several thousand people, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands, that will probably only buy American products, especially older generations, because they just have a very nationalistic view, and they see that buying American products will be a lot better for the American economy and will bring jobs to the United States. But I believe there are more people who would rather pay for a product produced in a foreign country if the price is significantly cheaper than a product made in their home market, even if that means creating jobs. Because personally, I would rather buy a product made in China that is significantly cheaper than a product made here in America. Now, for question 620, which basically states, would people in other cultures would respond differently than the way that I would have responded? And honestly, I 100% agree, because other countries like China, Japan, I feel like that they would prefer to purchase goods produced in their own country. I believe, other cultures I believe that they are completely different than the culture here in the United States, because we just have so many different cultures here, and people tend to spend less money on things if it's pretty much the same product. And let's see. Another example, I believe, with trade dumping in modern day, not just here in America, but countries in Europe, several Asian countries produce at such a low cost, and several companies tend to send their companies and factories, overseas, just so they can produce at such a low cost. And going back to the India and Chinese silk dumping issue, there was an investigation made. India filed for several dumping investigations against China during this time, and eventually the World Trade Organization got involved. And honestly, China is the WTO's primary target because of how cheap their labor is, and how often a different country sends out their product or factories over to China because of how cheap their labor is. And not just China, but even Sri Lanka, India, they also have large textile factories and a large textile economy. However, I believe China and even Japan, because Japan makes their products at a low price compared to here in America. But dumping, I believe it is a bad thing. However, I would still prefer to purchase a product at a lower price, even if that means it was made overseas. And even though it's bad for the economy, unless we are able to produce the same products at around the same price, then I will continue to purchase products at a cheaper price. And I believe that is everything. I learned a lot. I did not know much about dumping before I did this project, and that is it.